This is The Merge, and I'm your host, Alan Shhadeh, Dean of Engineering and Architecture at the American University of Beirut. Today is February 11, 2025, and we are fortunate to have with us Dr. Fadi Zaraket from the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering at AUB. Dr. Zaraket is a resident expert on automated reasoning and one of the architects of our highly regarded computer science and engineering program. His scientific publications span the world of automated reasoning, natural language processing, and computational linguistics, and he is perfectly equipped to help us navigate the dizzying pace of developments in an age of large language models and their percolation through society. Dr. Zaraket, welcome to The Merge.
Thank you, Alan. Very happy to be with you. I hope can be of good use here.
You are actively involved in probably one of the most important projects in the region in this domain, and that is creating an Arabic-specific large language model. Okay. Before we get into the details of how such a model works and why is it different, why is it important in the first place to do such a thing? Because I know, for example, today, if you talk to ChatGPT, you can talk to it in Arabic to some extent, probably French, many other languages. Is it just a matter of being able to interface with a model through a native language, or is there something deeper behind that? Can you give us a sense of what that is? And let's begin there.
So it's not only the language capacity. So ChatGPT, the latest models, the paid ones, would perform well if we are looking at a linguistic aspect. If you have kids and ChatGPT is used in Copilot for Word, for example, and a school asks kids to write something about Palestine, like summarize something on what's going on there, or maybe like take a novel for Ghassan Kanafani and write something about it. That's actually an example that happened with my daughter. So she tried to use Copilot, and it just created a different version of what Ghassan Kanafani meant in the story.
Can you, before we go on, since you used the example, for those who don't know, who is Ghassan Kanafani?
Ghassan Kanafani is a Palestinian novelist. He has lots of work on representing the Palestinian cause in a way that is very humanistic, that shows the conflict, if you may, the war, the tragedy of the Palestinian human being on multiple levels. And it goes from the person, the individual, to the town, to the cities, to the migration that happened, and then it raises that to a full humanistic level. If you ask ChatGPT to do a summary or to recall some of the instances, it just changes the context. It just takes it into something that is pro-Israel consistently, for example. And that's not by mistake. That's not by chance. There is a decision that is made in these 3-4 companies that govern the LLMs. These are the set of values that we want the LLMs to respect, and we are working very hard to make them respect these set of values. And these values are not only safety, and they are values that govern the world, that they have positions in every single instance of conflict and let's say controversy in the world.
Do they have to do that explicitly, or is it enough that they just be trained on the corpus of, say, English language literature, that it will come out naturally with such a bias?
It depends on the cause, but in most cases where it matters, where there is real controversy and people are really arguing about it, data exists on both sides. So they will have to do what we call post-processing and preferential training. And there are other techniques also that can be used to make the model say, at least the chatbot of the model, say what they want. So safeguards and stuff like that.
So this is an example, in a way, of the victors writing history.
Yeah. So, but imagine
intrinsically, let's say, let's go a step beyond that, because you could have an English language version that chooses the opposite values would represent Ghassan Kanafani the way he meant to be represented, or he meant to represent. There, if you're trained on the New York Times and you're trained on most mainstream, the volume of data that's out there, you will end up with a bias that if you're not consciously.
Yeah, I mean, the issue is it's not only New York Times. Like even New York Times have the values they've set are not necessarily New York Times or the data they have. There are a set of values that are set with these models that come from, let's say, actually, we don't know where they come from. They come from the minds of a very small
They have
elite.
an editorial position on things, for sure.
Well, the ethics teams are dismissed in these companies, literally, most of them, if you may. And there is a very small team of elite, Elon Musk, Sam Altman, these guys. Each one of them with a very small minority decides what's good to be written in Word, in Excel, in PowerPoint, in Canva, in these places from now on. Like, I'm writing a sentence, it will complete it for me. If I don't have a position, I'll take the answer. I might edit it a little bit to show my style, but from here to 10, 12 years, the majority of the content that will be there will be the content that is code-generated with these LLMs. So there's some kind of hegemony on knowledge generation, knowledge dissemination from here on. And for once, whether you agree with their positions or not, you need to tell your story in English and in Arabic. So this is why Fanar, the project that is happening in Qatar now that we are we're partners of, is not only trying to do the Arabic part. So the Arabic is important, and we need to tell our story in Arabic. We want our audience to interact with the model in Arabic and provide Arabic capacities. It's also the English version should be told as what your position is, at least to present an alternative that people can use. And now you can choose between these different models. If you are not out there, if you don't present an alternative, you have an issue. Your story is not there. It's similar to what you can see now on social media, for example. So social media, people push content, and there are some editing rules that keep some content and change other content and shadow ban or ban content. And then you look at it and you see a story that does not necessarily reflect the real majority or the real numbers that are contributing the content. So these policies are effective. They can actually trump data, if you may. Even if the data that is coming from the Arab world, for example, is pro-Palestine mostly, and the smaller data set is coming that is pro-Israel, on social media platforms, because of these bans, the numbers that are represented do not match the reality of the content that is being pushed.
What I'm wondering about is, even at another level, let's say there were no algorithms that were filtering content. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's say it became somehow we were able to neutralize all those filters and you just get what you get. It seems to me that an LLM that was trained primarily on a corpus of Arabic primary sources will have a different positionality in the world than an LLM that was trained primarily on English language sources, just because embedded in those, in what would be produced in Arabic, has a different context and set of values and everything else than another one would. Is that not a root alone reason enough to invest in an Arabic-specific LLM?
So when we say Arabic-specific LLM, we mean an Arabic LLM that is trained in English and in Arabic. So with a big focus on the Arabic data. So we need to face a reality in the Arab world that most of the knowledge generated in the last 100 years is not in Arabic. And we need that to be represented somehow. And the translations are not necessarily the best quality data that we have there. So we need the English. Some argue that we can use existing language models that are in English and do knowledge transfer. And this is something we're doing at the Arab Center. And some argue that we need to do it from scratch, like use the English and the Arabic from scratch. And this way we have more power to enforce our own policies and let the Arabic data speak for itself. Whether that will give you a totally different story or not is to be seen by looking at the results. I can imagine that, yes, this is a different statistical pool and it has a different center, let's say it's different average, different outliers, and definitely if you are modeling that, you should get something different. Nevertheless, the data that is in the Arab world is diverse, and the people who write, plenty of them, if not a majority, come from education in the West and in Europe and the States. They come back and they write. So you're not only using the literature that comes from 1900 and before, you're using all the Arab data. So it remains to be seen. I would say yes, you should have more, let's say, allegiance, loyalty to the causes of the area. But even with that, we are diverse. The people in Algeria are different than the people from Morocco, from the Gulf, from the Levant, from Egypt. You get different narratives. So that's to be seen, and we're starting to see some results. But back to the analogy between the social media and LLMs, both have another role other than just generating information. They do have, and this is where probably the big, let's say, concerns are. They do survey people more than they just disseminate, and I wouldn't say more. Like they also survey people. They know what we are interested in. They know our questions. They know our concerns. They know what's on our mind individually and as communities. And the LLM is pretty much, let's say, more dangerous because it gives you an answer. In social media, you say what's on your mind, and you express your opinion. Other people might answer you. In the LLM, you ask a question or you express a concern and you get an answer, even on intimate issues, you get a direct answer, even on a medication you want to take, let alone other. So OpenAI, Microsoft, Gemini with Google, all of these LLMs now have information about what people think daily, what happens to them daily, questions daily, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they give them answers. They can tell them what to do. They can direct them, which is, I think, on a surveillance and data dissemination, agenda dissemination perspective, is really dangerous. And this is why we think at the Arab Center that we are well positioned to tackle things, because it is, in essence, a social sciences think tank. If you may, think tank is not the right word. They don't like to say it. So it is a social sciences and humanities research place at essence, and it went into the digital world to try to address these issues, right? And so the capacities of the critical mind, the critical thinking that is needed exists and is ready to actually be involved in asking these questions, like, are the LLMs surveying mechanisms? How different they are from social media tools? On the long run, what's going to happen? Do these simulations and see, as, let's say, researchers, if we are concerned about our narrative living as a community, as a society, as an Arab world, what is our responsibility? How do we move? Do we continue doing research and inventions and worry about scientific contributions, or we get humbled, repeat some work, and do it the Arabic way? So this is where people need to see that effort. So I don't think the Arab world is doing much in terms of contributing to the science of LLMs, as much as there is a recipe out there. Let's try to do it the Arab way. There are efforts that are trying to do it the Arab way. Did they succeed? I mean, that's a question. The effort is still going. I don't think we reached a point where we say we're done. Especially that OpenAI is, and Claude Anthropic is ahead of everyone now. Google, Gemini also, right? So we're not there yet. So we're leveraging the recipes that are open, the open weights LLMs that are out there, the data that is gathered, the resources that exist in the ecosystem in the Gulf that is really, let's say, motivated to go in that direction, to try to find an answer to these questions.
Mm-hmm. Let's shift gears now.
Okay.
And think about the implications. So you've kind of laid out some maybe potentially scary implications
Okay.
that LLMs and these, especially as they're percolating through society, the way people use them is actually giving companies more information about those people and who they are. And I presume that every person that uses an LLM there's a file on that person, every individual on the planet that uses them. There's a file about them, and we will know maybe what makes them tick, what makes them eventually get some kind of disease, what makes
them to tick.
How they will vote, and what would it take to make them vote a certain way, and so on and so forth. So there is a lot of potential for abuse and control and deepening of control over populations. And I know that that's an extremely important problem to you and to many people in the world that are thinking about this critically. I want to step to a less critical problem, but still an important one. We're at a school of engineering, and a big part of our mission is to train young people to go into industry and have productive careers and contribute to society in whatever ways they can. And you were one of the architects of the computer science and engineering program here. And when we launched that, there was clearly a high unmet need for people that are extremely literate and capable in all things computing, whether it's designing hardware, or to designing software and algorithms and algorithmic thinking. How do you see, in the few years since things like ChatGPT have come out, how do you see the landscape changing for the kinds of skills that still need to be learned at school? Is it changing in your mind? Does an engineer need a different skill set than they needed 5 years ago already?
I wouldn't say it's a different skill set. It's problem solving now is more important than coding, for example.
How do you distinguish between those two? What do you mean by that distinction?
So in problem solving, you are faced with a new problem that we don't have a solution for. And you need to talk to the client, to talk to the person who has that problem, to discover the pains, and to translate them into what we call digital numerical formulas that you can now compute. Once you do that, writing the code to actually automate this task pretty much is a solved problem now. So I used to teach the 330 course, Data Structures Analysis of Algorithm, in a way that students would first find it a little bit laughable. I don't teach them how to write code. I teach them to write English and then move the English sentences into very specific English sentences where they only use the verb to be and verb to have. Is, has, have, right? And from there on, I tell them now, if you want to translate this into Python or C++, this is a one-to-one mapping. This thing becomes a structural relation. This thing is a composition relation. And the functions, the verbs, the verbs that you have to use are the actual functions in your code. And done. That will give you a good design. So this translation now is automatable. Now the LLM can take your English sentences, make them didactic English, if you may, and translate that to Python or C++. The same way we used to have to write assembly code before. And then C++ languages of let's say we call them high-level programming languages appeared, and there was a parser that takes you from C++ to the machine language. Now there is a parser that takes you from language, English, even Arabic, to Python and to C++ with a good degree of success. Let's say in the 90-95% success rate. And in here, we need to use scientific metric, but I'm throwing the 90-95% as just like a number for the audience to look at. So that now exists. Would it be 100%? I don't think it will be at 100%. You still need people to understand the code and debug and correct it. So the coding will still be needed, but not as much as we needed it before. Mm-hmm. Problem solving, writing that English that describes the problem and takes you into a solution, and that solution is beneficial with great value, added value to whatever we have now. That thing is in the generative, creative language, if you may, a human interaction field that the automation did not reach yet. And people are thinking they can go there. So that's the scary part. Can these LLMs, by talking with each other, by talking with people, actually discover that landscape? And sometimes we get surprised that we have some successes there. Sometimes, but these successes are always met with a little flaw here and there, but a little flaw is enough to crash everything. So we know that the current, let's say, computational structure, which is the neural networks, the parameters that are in these LLMs, are not enough to solve that problem because of the overfitting issue and because of we have to. So this is structural in them. If we find another way to do things, maybe, but now it doesn't exist. I mean,
So
there
are
are
you-
research labs are. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So the coding landscape is diminishing. We see that. Less demand is happening there. They need people who can debug, solve problems that are generated by LLMs, because when the code is generated by LLMs, it produces mistakes. You need people to debug the same way you debug human code. Human code is easier to debug than code produced by LLMs. So you need people who can solve problems, again, generated by humans and by LLMs. I need people who can take a problem and translate it into a digital computational concern, and then take it from there with pretty much the new parser, but of the English language now. I would concentrate more on problem solving and on giving students tools and language to actually try to debug and solve problems, even in coding, rather than teach them the syntax. And they still need to learn the syntax, but I wouldn't focus on it as much.
So you're suggesting moving further upstream in problem solving, but also maybe even in problem finding, defining the problems.
Problem finding, in human interaction, defining what is the digital language now. So at one point we had to talk about, let's say, arrays, variables, assignment statements, to tell them these are the constructs, and now you need to map the English language to these constructs. Now we probably need to think about different concerns. Maybe we can say classifier, clustering. What is the type of problem you're trying to solve now? Is it sorting? Like, name the problem types instead of naming the structures and the computing elements. So it's a matter of moving one or two steps in the ladder of abstraction in computing.
Mm-hmm.
But that might not be actually the only thing that you need to do. You need to learn the limitations of the current techniques. Like, where do these techniques that we have currently fail? How to compensate for that as an engineer or as a human trying to interact with them.
Mm-hmm.
So computing limitations, which is a theory. So they need to learn where does computing, automation, have limits, known limits, mathematically proven limits, that even if we hear lots of jargon about the technology surpassing them, we know, we proved that this is where the limits are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So once we know that, we know where we can move. And I don't want to scare you more than that.
Well, you taught a course recently at the Doha Institute for humanities majors.
Sure.
And it was a course on AI, or using AI, let's say. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because that sounds to me like something that will be more and more the case in universities.
Yeah, so it was say it was an experiment at the beginning, and it grew. It started as a workshop, and then it became 2 courses. The last course we tried, we have students. The students are from social sciences, humanities, political science, public administration, these majors, right? They haven't seen coding before. They don't know Python. They don't know C, C++. Math for them is, let's say, high school math. I don't know if they've seen integrals, for example. And they're doing their masters in these majors. They have data. They want to analyze this data, and they usually do it manually. And because they do it manually, they can cover a small data sets. So they take this course, and we go with them through the processes of understanding what data is, data typology, some kind of a taxonomy of what is data, what is text, how is text represented digitally, what is audio, how is it represented digitally, what is a video, what is an image, how it's presented, and how do you put all of these together? What is a class? What is a binary class? What is a multi-value class? And we go with those, and then it becomes easier for them to see that making a decision is a classification problem, for example. Putting a set of documents together, another set together, is a clustering problem. And then we define these problems for them. And we teach them how to curate data, how to use automated machine learning, and how to use automated code generation. They just produce Python code and run it. They know how to read the Python code, not necessarily them. They ask another LLM to read it for them and explain it. And they make sure that element to element things map. And then they run these things. And we had a cohort of 14 students who every 2 of them ran a project on text, on audio, and on video. So 3 different projects in the context of 4 months. And they came up with interesting results that gave them insights from this data without writing a line of code.
Mm-hmm.
And they had to use commercial tools like AutoML, AutoTrain from Hugging Face, AutoML from Google. I'm not doing a commercial, but these things give you some credit to start, and then you have to pay a little bit more when you really need to use them. So the credit they get to start was enough for them pretty much to run these projects and get results, insights that they found useful in their research. And they didn't need an engineer except me to tell them like these things exist. And this is how you take it from A to Z. These things to happen, like these 3 projects, they need like a 2nd or a 3rd year engineer, let's say 4 years back. And they need to spend 6 to 12 months to get these done. Like these are FYPs in 2019, let's say, each one of these projects. So
for the audience, a final year project.
FYP is a final year project at engineering. That is a 2-term project for 3 to 4 students working on it.
So today, a humanities student can do what a team of 3 or 4 engineers did 4 years ago.
In less than
in a shorter amount of time.
In a shorter amount of time. This is how automation is happening now. This doesn't mean we don't need engineers. We need the engineers to build these platforms, to enhance them, to make them more human-friendly, to keep them going.
It sounds, though, that we'll need less. Okay. Yes. And if we need fewer engineers, what would you teach? What would you think the skills of the engineers are for the future that we need at this point?
This is a very tough question to answer. And I would start with engage more into everything that has to do with human interaction. This is where we still excel. You need to do more effort to be at the excellent level.
Human beings.
Human beings.
Okay.
Engineers.
Okay.
Yeah. So excellence is important. Like now you get an LLM. So because of the structural problem of the LLMs, of how we train them, how they can retain information, they can do well at a B+ level. Above that, you need to overfit the machine, fine-tune it and overfit it. And then it will be very good at a fine, specific task it's doing, but it will deteriorate in other tasks. We don't have that limitation as human beings. We are multifaceted. So having more than one, let's say, specialty, capacity, have more capacities at the A level. That's what will make you relevant. So if you have 3-4 capacities, some in engineering, some in human sciences, some in graphic design, some in architecture, having that will make you relevant. You can bridge all of these things together, all of these communities together, and take a little bit of decision-making is something we still are better at. Even though like mundane decision-making, things where formulas can work, you don't need LLMs for them even.
So would you say to your engineering students today, your humanities, you're lucky that AUB has
Definitely.
such a huge requirement for the humanities.
The liberal arts education at AUB is invaluable now. In this,
it's even more important in this technological age.
I would really leverage that and do things that, like for example, Arabic here is very important. Things that you probably wouldn't find it at American colleges, and this will make you more relevant. Things that are culturally sensitive. So diversity in skills will keep us, and again, this is an opinion again. So excellence will keep you relevant, definitely. If you're A+ and above, you will compete at the remaining jobs. If you have more than one let's say specialty or capacity, then you have a better chance to actually, I wouldn't say enter the market, or to be of value, right? To be able to add value to the table. The market is another story. Like the market is not necessarily something that we can control. I mean, there are other issues that come with this, like the depopulation in the job market might actually be something that the capital system will not like. I mean, there is a big debate here whether they go with the universal basic income. This debate started. What does that mean? How do consumers behave? And if consumers behave like start not spending money, spending less money, what does that mean for the producers, right? So these companies need people to keep making money to be able to consume so that the market grows. And this is a necessity in the capital system. So I'm trying to leverage what I learned from social scientists in the last 2 years. So this will keep some balance from now till a point of time where we will not be able to push back against automation anymore. So it will give us some buffer of time. But till then, I mean, after that, we have to face the reality that we have machines that can do things better than humans, at least at a human level, and B+ level. And we don't need humans to do these things. We are keeping these humans just to entertain that we have human workers, right? I'm not sure how long that will live, but at one point, we need to face that reality and see what to do with it.
I want to ask you about the heat that's been generated by DeepSeek's announcement.
Okay.
DeepSeek is, of course, in the media as being a company that was able to do what OpenAI did, but with vastly fewer resources, and that it also not only required less resources to build, but requires fewer resources to run. What is the story behind that?
Okay, so DeepSeek is not the first. So after ChatGPT went out 3.5, researchers from Berkeley and Stanford produced Alpaca, which is a smaller model, a much smaller model than ChatGPT. And that distilled information from ChatGPT, 100,000 questions with their answers, trained a smaller model, and they performed as good as ChatGPT in a big majority of topics. And other companies followed suit, and people tried to do that again and again. So for cheaper, you can get the same performance on specific, a big umbrella of topics, but specific topics. What DeepSeek did, in addition to that, it did it without the tools, the hardware, the top-level NVIDIA chips that the others used to do the same work. So with the embargo against China, with the sanctions, they claimed that they used H800s, which are 3 generations back, if I'm not wrong, to do the work that is generated by the latest technology that NVIDIA is pushing. So DeepSeek is, if you may, is a hit to NVIDIA, not to OpenAI, not to the intelligence, if you may. It says that China can do it with resources that are not sanctioned and that can be produced outside the US. So that is actually what took the stocks of NVIDIA and the companies associated with it down. Other companies were affected, but not as much. So you can do it without actually paying the big bucks to the companies, NVIDIA, that is generating the GPUs, and it has a monopoly on the market now. So
did Alpaca and DeepSeek, for example, require that there already was a large language model out there for them to be able to derive the parameters from them, or could they have done it from scratch as well?
So Alpaca couldn't have done it from scratch. So this is announced. They announced that we actually went and distilled the information, and this is in their paper, in their blog. DeepSeek did not say that. But there is evidence that OpenAI researchers found that actually DeepSeek distilled information from ChatGPT to actually do that experiment, to succeed. But that's not a strong argument because, again, ChatGPT is trained on data that OpenAI does not have IP for.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the claim is pretty much the same, right?
Yeah.
So does it require that OpenAI appeared before? Maybe it depends how much China would have pushed resources, right, to actually appear again in the market. It is a matter of time. I mean, there is a race, and you have 2 giant forces with each one of them has plenty of resources, and they're trying to catch each other. So it will happen once and again and again and again. I don't think it's a matter of one needing the other. Of course, if OpenAI is out there and ChatGPT is there and I can use it to accelerate my pace, I would use it. But would it stop me if it doesn't exist? Or if I cannot access it? I don't think so. I mean, if let's say somehow the US enforces sanctions on using ChatGPT in China and you cannot surpass that, would that hinder the efforts to come up with the LLMs that are as good? I don't think so. I think the data is out there, it can be collected, and China has 1.5 billion plus people who can generate questions and answers, and they can do that in 2 days and generate the amount of information needed to train. So, and China is also a place where the West always claims that data privacy is not respected. So data is at the fingertips of the companies and at the government. So I don't think that data is a problem for China to resolve. So I would say maybe they used it, as OpenAI says, but that even if they didn't, I don't think that would have stopped them. It might have slowed them down a little bit.
Fadi, I want to ask you about another challenge that we haven't discussed today, but I know is on your mind, and that is regulation, or somehow controlling this arms race. So if you recall a while back, some of the leaders in the tech industry had signed a letter saying that we need to pause development of AI because we're afraid of where it could take us, and we don't have the guardrails built in right now to assure that AI is going to be aligned with the long-term interests of humanity. And of course, some of those very people today are the ones pushing forward the fastest. What do you see as what's the core challenge for regulation?
Okay, so regulation for AI is a must. It's not only for AI and the use of AI in automating tasks. So AI is a technique. The LLMs are techniques that we can use to translate English into commands and processes. And these processes will make decisions. And people are afraid that these decisions might overrule human specified targets and goals. And some go to even the extent that they might actually decide to take over Earth and the world, and we are not needed as a species anymore for AI. Even if you don't go that far, there is a threat. There is a threat, multiple threats. One of them is in the job market. One of them is in cultural hegemony. One of them is in, do we really need all of these languages? One of them is depopulation. And nobody is addressing this from a legislative, ethical control perspective. It's still addressed from a feasibility and accessibility perspective. And the race aspect is freeing all of these controls and checks. And that's pretty much scary. Regulation efforts that happened so far do not include, let's say, they included pretty much the giants in the tech industry. They included very few people from the academy that are, let's say, AI critics or even AI enthusiasts, but with some regulation perspectives, safety, correctness, control of these messages. And they are not mature enough yet. So the efforts to do the control are not mature enough, and they are being pushed back. There is a big pushback, for example, on two legislative orders in California that is trying to put them down. And the pushback is fully backed by the monopoly of AI in the US. All the large companies are doing that. So do we have enough awareness to push for legislative action to control and regulate across the world for that? I don't think this is a priority that is on the table now, and this is really something to worry about. So regulation is necessary for several reasons, where AI intervention, AI inclusion in the job market, AI inclusion in the decision processes might let people, let's say, reduce their responsibility of doing genocide. Like you hear about AI being used in Gaza, for example, in Lavender and other systems. Is it really AI? were there human beings behind it? Who's responsible? These are questions that I think should ask, right? How much can we let that go? Google last week reduced their constraints on using the technology, and they removed a sentence that commits to Google technology not being used in warfare. Where is that going?
In autonomous weapon systems.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. So the legal regimes that exist today assume an agent that is ultimately responsible for their actions. What happens when the software engineer no longer works for the company, but that autonomous system is killing people at this point.
Killing people and maybe doing more than killing people, like deciding who do we give the drugs to. You're gonna make decisions. Who do we operate on?
Now and it's true. I think it's already the case in Gaza that you have autonomous weapon system or something close to that. At least automating the use of targeting. Automated targeting of individuals, identification of individuals as targets. I believe that's been.
That's a claim.
And locating them.
That's a claim. It's still to be verified.
So let's go away from that claim. Let's go to a safer ground, but equally worrying. Let's say who gets health insurance?
Who gets health? Exactly.
Who gets a bank loan? Who gets a bank loan?
Who can buy houses? Right?
Who can buy a house? Exactly. That's an automated process.
Who gets a loan to go to school, to college?
And oftentimes the algorithm is opaque to the person telling you, sorry, you didn't get the loan.
You didn't get a visa.
That's giving up human agency to systems that are.
And it's not only it's giving up human agency, and also if you complain, the answer is it's not me. It's
the computer.
The AI. It's the computer. It's the automation. So no one is responsible, pretty much. So AI is a very good escape for people who want to do bad things, right? Or who want to do to take decisions that they don't want to pay for. So regulation is needed to say, okay, how do you tackle these issues when they come up? I think the legal systems are not ready to do it, and the awareness that we have is still, let's say, in awe with what we see as automation. Didn't reach the point of, we're trying to scare people, but it's sometimes good and bad that you try to scare people. But we are at a point where
we're in a scary place.
We are in a scary place, and the decisions made now will take us to some point where I don't know that we can reverse things.
So that's a bottom-up, let's say a bottom-up approach to this problem would be, we train the people that are capable of developing these technologies, and we train them in a way that they refuse to develop things that aren't proven safe ahead of time.
For example,
that's always been part of the ethos of engineering design, is that the first priority is safety. You cannot release a technology that you know is unsafe or that you haven't proven is safe with a high degree of confidence. And today, it seems like we've put aside that core ethos of the profession and are speeding forward with technologies
deliberately. Like again, some companies did fire the ethics teams. This is something that scares me more than actually the paranoia that says, okay, AI will
take over the world.
Take over the world. Like the same people who are saying that are not using this as an argument, and this scares me again.
Is it time to develop a major where we teach people how to shut down AI systems, hack into and shut down AI systems?
Not necessarily hack
as a citizen self-defense from machines. You can imagine such a scenario.
Yeah, we go into the matrix now, right? So some kind of we need there is a good field that basically in automated reasoning we worry about correctness.
Yes.
And we do automation for correctness. And that grew into a place where we want safety. Autonomous car driving, for example. You want the car not to hit someone. You want the car not to go into an accident. So there you have a well-defined problem. We're not going to let cars drive themselves unless we meet some requirements. And with LLMs, with automation, we don't have that. We're letting all of these, you have, intimate friends in Europe talking, automated intimate friends talking into people with suicidal issues. and they're giving them advice without control. And nobody gave them a score that, yeah, you pass, you can do this. Or
Absolutely.
not. Yeah.
Absolutely. Fadi, last question for you today. What do you think is the most important thing that we haven't talked about that we should be discussing, or that the world is not really paying attention to, but they should be paying attention to, and with regard to either large language models or artificial intelligence?
A collaborative effort would have been better, right? So we are in knowledge dissemination, knowledge production. Competitiveness produces good results. But respecting ethics, being collaborative, respecting cultures of others, including people who contributed to knowledge in the world, who have their cultures and they would like their cultures to be respected, is something that could be done better. Who should actually take the effort to do that? I'm not sure. The United Nations, the US, collection of governments, even in the Arab world. Like you see United Arab Emirates building JAIS, Saudi Arabia building Alam and other LLMs, Qatar building Fanar. Egypt has an initiative with Huawei, and some open source, other places research is producing things. Each one of them is reaching a point where it's saying we are either saturated or we have to find different ways, creative ways to put more resources and put more data, while collaboration can solve that question easily. And collaboration is not easy, but it is, at least in the Gulf, in the Arab world, someone should do this out of some strategy for us to be present, to contribute, and that requires some initiative, which is happening now pretty much at the research institute levels. I think it should be at a higher level, whether in the Gulf, in the Arab world, or in the world in general.
It's been a pleasure having you on today. I look forward to having you again in the future.
Sure.
Thank you for being with us, Fadi.
Thank you, Yalan. Thank you a lot.